Muy buenas, gente, estamos hoy aquí en un nuevo vídeo sobre New World. Estamos haciendo una review de la entrevista de Rich y Asmongold a Mike, que es uno de los developers del juego. He avanzado bastante en el tiempo, ya que la entrevista dura media hora y tampoco quiero que este vídeo se haga muy pesado, ya que yo ya la he visto 2 veces la entrevista, ¿vale? Para informarme. Os he puesto los subtítulos en castellano para que sea más sencillo para algunas de las personas y pueda, pues, entender lo que dicen a la vez que yo estoy contestando. Y me he adelantado un buen cacho, ya que son una pequeña introducción y luego le hacen preguntas de acerca hacia dónde va a ir el juego, ya que ha sufrido varios cambios. Empezó siendo un survival mundo abierto, full PvP, el juego está acabando siendo un MMO. Y las respuestas de Mike está llevando están yendo hacia un cauce, digamos, queremos captar el máximo número de jugadores, queremos que esa cantidad de jugadores cada vez sea mayor, trabaje con nosotros, nos dé feedback, que cualquier tipo de feedback que hagáis por redes sociales, sea por correo, sea por Twitter, sea por un foro, no se lo están tomando a mal, sino simplemente les está gustando y están trabajando en ello. Ahora, a continuación, lo que haremos será ya entrar en preguntas más específicas, ¿vale? Empezará ahora Asmongold y nada, iremos comentando después de cada pregunta, una pequeña pausa y intentaré que sean breves explicaciones, ya que hemos hecho ya un podcast en streaming y ver más o menos hacia dónde van los tiros, ¿vale?
The dev team and the community and building towards this goal.
So whenever we look at the preview, how big is the map going to be when the game actually comes out compared to what we see from the preview?
Comparatively to what you see, we are building more landmass. I wouldn't say it's going to be dramatically different, but there are going to be, other areas that you can explore with new types of enemies. One of the big things for us as we've been going through this and getting feedback is examining a lot of the stuff that I witnessed even on both of your streams of just like, oh, I'm doing the same kinds of things over and over again. And even though the build that you're playing is probably several months old by now, it's all those little jabs are like, oh, we should have done that better. Oh, we're taking the time to make those things better. So we want to make sure that every quest that you take isn't going to be get 1,000 crates, kill 1,000 enemies ad nauseum. One of our goals was to stand up that system and now continue to improve upon it and have deeper ties and integration with the core loops of the game. So those are things that we're going to take time and effort to make sure we can do. And that also means, adding visual variety in the opportunities that we have, whether it's looking at the enemy roster, additional biomes and kits and all that type of stuff it's very important to us. But it doesn't just stop at launch. And I think that's something I want to be really clear on is we're a live game. So as soon as we hit launch, we don't take our foot off the gas. It goes down further. So we want to build more and create more. And the closer we get to that is going to lead for more opportunities for us to play together, get more feedback, and align directionally, and I think build something that we want to play together for years to come.
So when you talk about the...
Vale, Asmongold le hace una pregunta muy concreta, ¿vale? Le dice, ¿cómo de grande va a ser el mapa comparado con lo que tenemos ahora, básicamente? ¿Cómo va a ser? Y Mike vuelve a hacer una respuesta un poco abierta, en plan de que el mapa no va... O sea, sí que responde algo concreto, que es que el mapa no va a sufrir grandes cambios comparado con lo que ya hay. En plan, lo que van a hacer es ir añadiendo terrenos nuevos, biomas nuevos, con enemigos nuevos, y que lo que están buscando es que sea un mapa, o sea, que no sea repetitivo, que van a toquetear el tema de las quests para que no sea repetitivo. Y dice que aunque el juego salga, seguirán trabajando para ampliarlo, entiendo, siguen trabajando. Entonces, pensando en otra de las cosas que hablamos en el podcast, tema de si seguirán haciendo updates, agrandando el mapa, o pensando ya en una especie de expansión gratuita o de pago, pero que seguirán trabajando en ello. Y vuelve a que buscan ser, o sea, lo que se ve que es un proyecto que quiere hacer Amazon, que era obvio lo que hablábamos, que quieren que sea un proyecto de a largo plazo, habla de años, dentro de años, tener muchos jugadores y seguir construyendo. O sea, el objetivo como developer de lo que habla Mike al final es como crear una comunidad. Él quiere crear una comunidad. No se centra en este juego, sacar el juego y que este juego le gusta a la gente, sino quiere una comunidad para que puedan seguir trabajando en ello y seguir creciendo.
Core loops in the game. I think one of the things that I personally felt a little bit of concern about, and I've heard Asmon start to say some of the same things, and I've seen it in chat as well. It does feel like the core loops that you go through while leveling are also going to be pretty similar to the core loops which you're engaging in at the end game content to actually progress. So sometimes it feels like the rewards that you're getting for those core loops, which are steadily the same throughout the entirety of the game, you don't necessarily have that desire to continue following those loops once you actually get to max level. It's like, okay, I do feel like I've beaten the game at this point. Is there any plans to kind of break that actual system or add on to the end game systems, whether it would be with instance content in PvP or PvE?
Yeah, absolutely. For players, we don't want their journey to end at 60, even though that might be the max cap for when, we're at launch. But we want you to always have things that are goals, that are achievable, that are things that you want to chase, whether it's in the PvE to control territory and making the incentives for owning territory stronger and more prevalent and making people want to engage in those systems, or the things that you chase in the end game, whether it's like, I want to be a master crafter and build things that are at parity, if not a little bit better than things that I might find as world drops. Because as a master crafter, I could be more specific in the things that I'm building instead of have the randomness. So there's things that we want to add and include, and that's part of this conversation in preview week is you've had a chance to kind of taste initial offerings and seeing what these systems may or may not be capable of doing. So that's why I love this dialogue, is to find out more about like, oh, you know what, Mike, this would be really cool if this could happen like this. And having that perspective, and then basically the hundreds of thousands of players during preview week having their perspectives as well, we can start drafting a better picture of what that looks like.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we really want to see. And I think the leveling experience has been generally pretty good. At a certain point, I think that for many people, it just involved farming the corruption areas for the gear, which it might be a little bit odd considering people are doing these 65 zones at like level 40. And I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to evolve. And then also more so how you're going to create challenges at the end game. Because right now, because it's an open world game outside of the Spriggan bosses that are locked to 5 players, there doesn't really seem to be a whole lot of challenges in the end game because you can overcome the challenges just by bringing more people. So do you plan on bringing in more instance content or finding a way to create challenges in the open world through in-game content as well?
Yeah, the answer would be both. So we're looking at options with instance content and ways to make the open world content even more compelling. So a lot of things that we're, and no doubt that you've witnessed, I've seen it as well, is Zerg rushing in areas. There are some systems that kind of promote that, and those are things that we want to re-examine as well. It's also the difficulty curve. We did bias to make the game not as difficult early on, because we were afraid of new players getting accustomed to the control scheme. But it looks like players are very good at the game and are adapting very well. So those are things that we're going to consider as we look at like, okay, how far above your weight should you be able to punch? How does that get dictated when you're with a group of people or more than a group of people? How does gear affect that, and also the gear chase? So all these levers that you want to tune and tweak. And then now, I mean, this is again why the preview week was so awesome, is we had so many players involved in playing across multiple servers and continents that we actually got to see what their play styles are and how they were achieving those levels. What was the median level that was achieved like through X number of hours? We also get to see exploits like what you saw with the delivery missions. The delivery missions.
Yeah, my bad.
We're like, oh, that's awesome. I didn't know you could do that.
To dive in on, I want to dive on a...
Vale, antes de seguir avanzando un poquito, ¿vale? Le preguntan cómo va a ser... O sea, ¿hacia dónde va a tirar el endgame? Ya que ahora mismo eso. La gente se iba a los portales de corrupción siendo level 40, aunque pusieran que mínimo tenías que ser level 65 y era un poco meme eso. Y que... Por ejemplo, eso, si va a haber desafíos, ya que el desafío más grande que tienes ahora mismo en el juego sería la arena de Strugman en Midgard, y realmente es para 5 personas, y que si va a haber más instancias o no, y de que se lo están valorando. Quieren subir la dificultad, están valorando traer más instancias, más desafíos en mundo abierto. Pero lo que dicen es lo que yo me imaginaba, ¿vale? Durante la preview lo que han hecho es un sesgo de decir, no querían que el casual player, que a lo mejor entra para 2 días, tuviera una curva de aprendizaje muy alta y a lo mejor no se enterara y necesitara muchas horas. Entonces lo que eso ha provocado es que el late game sea mucho más asequible. Es decir, tú le metes horas, si eres un jugador medianamente normal, el late game tampoco te supone ningún tipo de dificultad. Entonces, lo que dicen es que quieren ver realmente las horas medias que tardas en conseguir cada cosa para ir trabajando y puliendo esos pequeños matices. Y no mucho más, que realmente están respondiendo cosas muy abiertas, ¿no? Que sí que tenían muchos jugadores en muchos servidores y han podido estar viendo los distintos estilos de juego. No está contestando de manera concreta, que yo lo entiendo, ¿no? Porque le quedan 9 meses al proyecto y en esos 9 meses pues puede quedar mucho trabajo por hacer y pueden aún cambiar muchas cosas. Pero bueno, por ahora a mi parecer, no sé, es que a la pregunta esa de qué tenéis pensado, bueno, al menos dice que eso, que algo que yo creí escuchar era que no tenían pensado meter instancias, pero creo que es una cosa que al final ya hay 4 instancias, las 3 arenas de Eden Grove y la arena de Midgard, y yo creo que acabarán haciendo más instancias, sinceramente.
Few points of minutia when we're kind of in this territory. With the delivery missions, even without the exploit, they did give a solid chunk of XP, and it seemed like a way that you would be able to be pretty rewarded based off of the actual faction tokens, which you would receive and also XP, and you could pretty much play the game without fighting anyone if you did want to, and you could just have the healing staff, be a Zoomy boy, and go for it. Do you intend to keep the XP and the rewards that high with things like delivery missions and actually having ways to play the game as somewhat of a pacifist?
A lot of questions there. I'll try to break it down. If you wanted to play the game as a pacifist, we don't want to discourage that. We think there are opportunities for you. So say I'm friends with Asmon and I just suck at combat. Like I don't want to go out there. I'm just going to get bodied or I'm afraid of PvP. But I love grinding on crafting.
You just described
gather
me
all the time, and then you come and bring me all of your mats, and then I'm just leveling up, and I'm just the best swordsmith in Windsward. That's all there is. It's like you want the best gear, and I can make you exactly what you want as long as you bring me these mats. That's the life I want to live, and I have a small little cottage just over the corner.
Yeah,
it's like that. We want a place where all those players can have like a role that they want to fill, whether it's through PvE, through PvP, or just passively. I just like dressing up and living in this house, or I like dancing naked in the town square. So be it. All power to you. So next part is speed of leveling, right? Speed of leveling was exaggerated. It is preview week. We needed to see everybody playing in high level areas. Like we needed to see what happens with the current state of the end game as it was several months ago. And so very eye-opening, a lot of validations and concerns, or I'm sorry, I should say concerns that we had were validated. And then we saw some other play behaviors that we thought were like amazing. Things that you guys thought were not bugs and were intentional and you kept on going after. I was dying inside, but it was very funny and it was great content to watch.
Are you talking about the top of the tower?
Oh yeah. And what killed me, I was like, oh no, we fixed that. Oh, I know what change list it is exactly.
I know. It's like we were going through like every single little weird, like, oh, well, what if we leave 2 ads up? What if we leave an archer up? What if we leave something else up? We had tried everything. And so it's very good to hear that you guys are looking at those things and fixing them. I do have a very specific question here, is that you're talking about specific gameplay things that you've identified the players have done. What are some of those things that you've identified and you've seen that like players are doing that you think are cool or that you want to change?
Well, the things that we want to change is like life staff, me watching that in general, where I see why people are using that as a crutch, but that's not its intended use.
Yes.
And so we would rather re-examine that design. And as a matter of fact, all over weapon balance, like slightly tangential. It's like I saw the stun lock stuff that was happening with the hatchet. There are ways around it, but that's not the desired behavior to make it that easy mode in its current state. And so that's a big focus of ours, is overall weapon balance and like how these abilities integrate with each other to complement each other.
Well,
Vale. Varias cosas, ¿vale? Ahora estaban hablando del tema de... Bueno, perdón. Rich comentaba acerca de lo de las misiones de entrega, si van a seguir teniendo el mismo punto de experiencia y de tokens. Habla de las de... Yo entiendo que habla de las de PvP de facción, porque lo dice lo de los tokens, se refiere a esas, las de entrega. Dice que realmente te las puedes hacer tranquilamente, simplemente llevando el palo de curar y vas daseándote y no te encuentras a nadie, nadie te mata y tienes un montón de experiencia gratis. Entonces Mike de ese tema está ahora hablando y dice que claro que están revisando el tema del bastón de vida, el tema del stun lock que hace el hacha, que todos lo hemos sufrido cuando estamos haciendo PvP, que es que te coge, te pegan con el hacha, te stunean, no te dejan moverte y te acaban matando, aunque sea una persona 20 levels menos. También habla del tema de que nosotros lo esperábamos, la experiencia está muy busteada, porque porque ellos también querían ver qué pasaba en el endgame del juego. Querían ver qué pasaba, qué problemas podía haber. Ellos tenían unas pequeñas teorías y pues confirmarlas y también ver. Y creo que también se refieren a los bugs que hay. Asmongold se refiere cuando habla de lo de la torre. Creo que se refiere a la de Eden Grove, que tienes la de las bolas para poder entrar en las 3 arenas que hay en Eden Grove y que no puedes hacerla, que simplemente es la de pulsas un botón, te van apareciendo mobs hasta que te aparece un boss, matas ese boss y te da la bola. Eso estaba bugueado y a partir de los 3 minutos más o menos se bugueaba y se reiniciaba. Daba igual lo que hicieras, daba exactamente igual lo que hicieras.
Because it is classless, so your weapon means a lot to you as a player. It defines how you interact with the world.
Well, how about like, so whenever you use an ability, let's say on your wife's staff, or like I think the hatchet's the best example. So let's say you use Berserk and that's a 45-second cooldown. Then you swap your weapon, and then the other weapons are also on a 45-second cooldown for that ability. Is that something that you see like an issue with, or do you think that should be like that? Is that intended?
It was intended the way that it came out.
Yeah.
But after playtest feedback, and then through our alpha, and then also watching player sentiment, we're actually re-examining that, and we want to see like it's walking that line before. You don't want it to be too spammy, but you also want it to feel accessible, and you want to make the decision making for players feel awesome, right? You're like, oh, I saw this chain because the way I set up my abilities uniquely between these 3 weapons, so I can do stuff that someone else might not. And really, I could watch you and say, like, you know what, that's Asmon playing because the way that he's comboing these abilities together. That's very
missing
uniquely
everything.
him.
Yeah.
That's the way he does. It's like we want that type of tactical combat depth. Like we want skill to be important. So combat balance, whether it's like you're feeling lag in attacks or you're feeling like attacks are queuing up too fast.
Yes.
Those are all collision issues. Those are all things that we're actively looking at and are very important to us and as far as the overall play experience. Now, what I can't tell you, because I don't run those teams, I can't tell you what the exact solution is, but I can tell you that it's definitely on our radar. It's a concern of ours because we want all of us, ourselves included, to have the best possible play experience. Because what I like about New World is its unique take on combat within an MMO. I love the fact that it's like an action RPG with an MMO wrapper. It's like awesome to me because I don't really get to participate in those. And I love all action combat games. I'm a sucker for them. It's like Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, Revengeance, like anything by Platinum. I'm a big fanboy, but yeah.
Vale, le preguntan acerca a Mike acerca del tema de las armas y acerca de los cooldowns, ¿vale? Ahora mismo tú tienes 3 armas con 3 habilidades. Dice que si te tirabas con Berserker, una de las habilidades creo que eran 45 segundos y que claro, te deja una habilidad completamente inutilizada. A lo que Mike le responde que fue intencionado, que querían comprobarlo y que el juego va a cambiar en ese sentido. No va a ser algo spameable. Creo que el Guild Wars 2 tiene un sistema similar, sin cooldowns entre armas. Y lo que quieren es hacer cooldowns pero más pequeños, ¿vale? Porque quieren que el jugador, el skill del jugador esté en cómo colocas en tus 3 armas las habilidades para poder hacer el mejor combo posible. Eso me parece interesante, está muy guay el tema de combear armas. Eso sí, los cooldowns tienen que ser menores y el balanceo, creo que cuanto más spameables son las habilidades, más complicado de balancear es. Porque si tú una habilidad quita mucho y le metes un cooldown muy grande, creo que está bastante bien, ya que haces mucho daño y no lo puedes spamear. Claro, si tú bajas todos los cooldowns es la parte peligrosa, porque ahí es donde podrías empezar a ver. Imagínate que yo el expansivo que tengo del mago lo tengo cada poco y hago un montón de daño. O la llamarada, y puedo ir todo el rato con una llamarada que quite mucho daño. Balancearlo sería un poco complicado. Entonces, eso es. El Mike dice que él no sabe la solución exacta, pero que es uno de los puntos fuertes que tienen en el radar para ir a corregir.
Okay, well, that's good. I have another question. I think a lot of people have asked about this. How do you guys feel about mounts?
Tema complicado, ¿eh? Que se ha debatido mucho en los chats de Twitch. Mucho. Tema de las monturas. Tema de las monturas. Ya sabéis mi opinión, antes de seguir viendo el vídeo, mi opinión hacia las monturas es que debería ser algo como un premio en late game, nada en early game. Nada en early game. Y que prefiero monturas al viaje rápido que existe actualmente por Azor. Opinión personal. Salvo a Fuertes y tu casa, que eso entiendo que sí que deberías tener esos viajes.
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
That's one that I think there's still a lot of debate over, and I've seen it on other stream channels as well. People discussing it. Is it more important to fast travel between towns and then explore the open cities, or how does the mount impact PvP and your interactions with other people? Because what mounts contribute to, and when I played WoW, I fell victim to this too, is it makes the world feel that much smaller when you speed through it, right? Everything's about
Especially
perspective.
with flying mounts.
Especially with flying mounts.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm missing out on all these opportunities to find and discover things. It's like when you're up in an airplane and you're looking down, you don't get to see all the cool things that are below the canopy. And so that's the kind of thing you want to balance. We spent a lot of time building this beautiful world that I want players to deeply explore. Like, I've seen the compliments you've had on the different locations in the world and how beautiful they are. And I don't want players to miss out on those opportunities.
Yeah.
Well,
So it's always got to be this balance,
Yes.
right?
I actually feel like most people who spend a lot of time playing the game are the ones in chat spamming that they don't want mounts. I definitely understand where a lot of the ideas of mounts come from, and I feel like it's always going to be that desire to try to go a little bit faster, but I definitely understand where you're coming from in a lot of ways, and I'm excited to see what you guys ultimately decide on, but I do want to dive in deeper on kind of tagging and how that...
Vale, ahora va a cambiar de pregunta, entonces vamos a hablar del tema de la montura. Yo he jugado muchos survivals, ¿vale? Survivals siempre son juegos PvP, o sea, bueno, survivals multiplayer. Que todos, desde las alfas los he jugado, han muerto cuando he metido vehículos. ¿Por qué? Si la gente no va a pie, no hay PvP. Eso es así. Si tú puedes ir volando, no te vas a pegar con nadie. Si tú puedes ir a 20 km por hora, no te vas a pegar con nadie. Entonces es lo que Mike razona. Aquí le doy un punto muy a mi favor de Mike, que es que tienen miedo de cómo afectaría las monturas al PvP y cómo afectaría, lo compara con el WoW cuando metieron las monturas voladoras. Yo por eso precisamente no soy partidario, porque yo creo que cuando tú llegas a late game, vale, tú eres, pongamos la situación actual de la preview, vale, hostia, y un inciso, perdón por estar siempre mirando esta cámara, o sea, a la pantalla de la izquierda, es la costumbre de streamear, no estoy tan acostumbrado a mirar la cámara, pero bueno, después de esto, pongamos que el mapa sea como es actualmente, ¿vale? Tú eres level alto. ¿Por qué motivo irías a una zona de leveo baja? Como puede ser las zonas del sur del todo. Lo único porque quisieras conquistarlo. Si no, ¿qué sentido tiene estar en PvP siendo level 60 en zonas de level 20? Tú te vas a pegar en las zonas altas. Entonces, ¿por qué necesidad tengo? ¿Qué necesidad tengo de una montura? Me refiero, si no es por el tema del crafteo. Y si es por el tema del crafteo, ¿por qué no meter una especie de carreta estilo mula de carga donde poder llevar las cosas? ¿Sabes? aunque te muevas más lento, y que siempre que lleves esa carreta a lo mejor vayas en PvE, perdón. No lo sé. Algo diferente creo que es necesario. Yo no veo las monturas como algo que deberías tener en early game, porque precisamente lo que dice Mike es que han trabajado mucho en el desarrollo de estos biomas, y es que hay zonas que son preciosas del mapa. Zonas que se ve que han tenido o poco trabajo o diseñadores no tan buenos. A mi parecer, por ejemplo, la zona del pantano deja mucho que desear comparado con un Edengrove, un Everfall, un Brightwood, toda la zona Midgard, Great Cave, está bastante bien. Y hay zonas que son un poco... También he de decir que a mí, de los biomas, algo que no me acaba de ganar es que, si os fijáis, todas las zonas de minibosses en cada zona, en cada territorio, son muy iguales. Todos los especies de templos son exactamente iguales, con la misma distribución prácticamente. Es algo que yo creo que deberían de meter un poquito más hincapié para hacerte sentir que estás en un territorio distinto. Porque si tú te pones a hacer leveo y vas cambiando de territorio sin hacer power leveling, vas a pasar por cada una de esas zonas en general. Y si pasas por cada una de esas zonas y al final son exactamente iguales los templos, pierde un poco la gracia, a mi parecer.
That works right now.
Oh, yeah.
So you've talked a lot about some of the potential iterations that could happen with combat. How did you guys feel about when you're out in the world and all of a sudden you're looking at something and you're trying to tag it and you get body blocked by other people who are also trying to tag the same things?
Yeah, so this is one that we've been in deep discussion with on our leadership team as well. Just like mounts, there's a double-edged sword to the body blocking. There's a solution if someone's just body blocking you from entering a doorway. You can sheath your weapon, it removes your player collision, you can straight go through, no problem. And a big problem with that is that might be hidden to players. It's not common knowledge. That's something that the game needs to do better, is teaching you the mechanics of the game, specifically those kind of like key ones that help you in bad situations. But what happens is, you don't want in PvP, it might be unfair to have a whole bunch of people walled in front of you and you can shoot straight through them and just body someone on the other side. So we're looking at what is the strategy impact in PvP and how does it affect you in PvE. I don't have a solution for that myself, but it's something that is of topic and we're diving deep into, because we understand the concerns as a PvE player. It's like, oh man, this jackass ran right in the way and I just shot him in the head and he just like ate up my shot and now I can't get the kill that I was
missed a tag on the mob.
You missed a tag on the mob.
Thing. Whenever I'm in a party, I have to individually tag a mob, and I don't know if this is too granular or not, or really if you have an answer for this or not, but are you guys going to have a thing to where, like, if somebody in your party tags a mob, everybody gets experience, or is it intended that every single player has to individually tag whichever mob is being killed?
In a party, typically, you should get the credit and not have to tag, so that could be a bug. So I would have to go back and look at that. But from my understanding, party members should share across the board. Go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. Looking at the world, I also wanted to ask, if you go around and just to all of the areas, there are a number of areas that are relatively the same thing. So if you go to an area with, like, let's say all the ancient guardians, you can expect to see, a few rock areas where you're able to go up a little small pathway, and then there might be a taskmaster or something up there, and there's like a chest in there, and it feels like these become very repetitive. And is there something that you guys are looking at doing to try to spice up those different areas to give them a little bit more variety? Because there's about like 30 of them, they're about the same.
Absolutely. I mean, you will see similar setups and locations because it's a shared language of each of the enemy families. But for me, it's inducing that visual variety and those spices, and that's going to come from the improvements that we're making to the quest system. There should be some fun stuff that we're doing with AI in the future. So look out for that. We'll probably have further discussions the next time we talk. Right. But what we want to do is basically add more variety in areas and make your travel into those areas more meaningful, whether it's quests, whether it's lore and deep exploration, maybe it's to gather very specific things. So there's lots of opportunities to do those types of things.
Vale, varios temas. Hablan de, claro, La gente que va en PvE del body block, ¿vale? El body block en el sentido de tanto personal como de hitbox, por ejemplo, lo del mago, lo de los arqueros, mosqueteros y demás, ¿vale? Todos los que hemos jugado rango en este juego, tenemos la dificultad de que a mayores de que tienes que darle skillshot, encima no te lo puede bloquear ningún compañero. Pero también cuando vas en PvE, el mítico tonto que se te queda en una caseta en la puerta y tú no puedes pasar, entonces... están valorando esas distintas opciones para que, por ejemplo, cuando vayas en PvP no sea una muralla de gente de tu equipo y gente disparando otra vez para dañar el otro lado. Entonces eso es lo que están trabajando para valorar y poder balancear ese tema, ¿vale? Ese tema. Y justo lo que acabo de comentar antes, el tema de lo de que las zonas son muy iguales y demás, es algo que van a toquetear. Tema de IA, tema de áreas específicas... eso me agrada, es algo que me gusta, porque creo que el juego está muy bien, pero le faltan esos pequeños detalles por pulir. A nivel PvE hablando, quitando que las cosas son bastante repetitivas, a nivel PvE hablando creo que eso está bastante bien toquetearlo.
Yeah, okay, that's great.
Yeah,
go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I kind of want to talk a little bit about how you guys felt coming out of the preview with for anybody who's just jumping in right now, there's kind of this idea that all of the different areas, you're fighting for the control of those areas, and then ultimately you're going to travel to different places. If you want a higher level crafting bench, for example, you have different storage in different zones. Did you guys feel like that aspect of the world was working the way that you did intend to, like vying for the different regions?
I think the core base is working the way that we intended to, but we need to have stronger incentives. That's stuff that we saw in alpha, and that's stuff that we're currently working on. We want players to feel awesome about controlling a territory. Like, oh yeah, our company, our faction, we did this. These are the benefits we get. This is awesome. And then we want the people that don't have that awesomeness to have ways to be like, oh, well, we need to get in on this. What are the things that we can do? How can we challenge the rulers of this particular territory? So we want wars, not ganks. This is fabulous feedback, and my dear hope is anyone that was on the stream or participated goes onto our forums, contacts our community leads, and gives us like more of this constructive criticism. Like we don't consider it hate or anything like that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean,
vale, el tema de los territorios, que ahora realmente que tú controles un territorio te da un poco igual. Rick dice que tú, pues eso, el tema de viajar, los almacenes de distintas ciudades, a mí es algo que me gusta. Y eso de tener que viajar a ciudades diferentes porque buscas a lo mejor la forja nivel 5 en un lado, lo de costurería lo tiene otra ciudad. Y luego Mike lo que le contesta es un poco más el tema del el control de la ciudad. No le contesta tanto eso, sino que incentivar a la gente a conseguir un territorio. Y la gente que no tenga un territorio es que le entren ganas de conseguir uno, ya que la recompensa va a ser golosa, va a ser que te van a dar ganas de conseguirlo. Realmente ahora mismo la recompensa de tener una ciudad o no es tema para un TP más barato y cuatro tonterías más, porque a día de hoy en la preview, como todo estaba tan busteado, la experiencia, los tokens, balancear creo que es muy complicado. Muy muy complicado. Entonces, claro, balancear cuando tú estás metiendo un boost de experiencia es difícil de valorar. Y también agradezco un montón que la gente vaya a los foros, a lo que hablamos ante redes sociales, les comente, les dé su opinión, porque no lo consideran hate, sino como oportunidades de mejorar. Vale, vuelvo a hacer hincapié en eso.
Like we really look forward to doing that. I feel like one of the things that's been an overarching element of feedback that a lot of people have given is that the world itself is incredible. And I also wanted to ask about collecting resources in the world and how you feel like crafting plays a part in the end game. Do you feel like crafting gear would be ultimately the strongest gear? And how far would you be able to take crafting gear? Because right now you have the oil crumb gear, which is the highest gear. And I'm not sure if there's something else that's intended with like maybe specific resources from high-end content or anything else. So how do you really feel like crafting would integrate into the end game?
So from a high level, we want crafting to be at parity with any high-level world drops or things that you get from bosses. So crafting needs to be important. So holistically, that's our belief. And that's also part of a chase. Like we talked about earlier about the player that wants to do nothing but craft. I want to be the best blacksmith. We want to enable that. And it's not very enabling if I find out like, oh, well, I'm 2 tiers below the best gear that you can get from some, drop. So that is not our vision for how we want that participation. But it's also, we want more unique things to come from crafting. It's like, oh, I was able to collect this specific thing because my logging skill was so high that I got this specific sap that only drops from these types of trees. Yes. And I was only able to do that because I have the best axe in the world. So aspirationally, exactly kind of directionally where we want to head.
Okay, great. That's...
Vale, esto era uno de los temas que también tocamos en los podcasts y obviamente los drops están muy altos en el juego actualmente. No tenía sentido en esta preview toquetear el tema del crafting, más que por mera curiosidad de cómo funciona, ya que cualquier mob te tiraba moradas y armas súper buenas, que incluso desbalanceaban el hecho de la legendaria. Subiré posteriormente también algún vídeo sobre la serie de quests que me dio a hacer la legendaria y el drop que me dio en comparación con otras armas, y se verá que realmente no es nada del otro mundo, precisamente por eso, porque casi cualquier bicho te tiraba un arma muy buena. Entonces el objetivo, el crafting de este juego es espectacular, el tema a mí me parece muy bien hecho. Y que quieren que el crafting de max level esté a la par que el drop de boss, de world boss en el mapa. Entonces, yo creo que es algo muy bueno, y que es algo que está muy bien. Por ejemplo, el thick hide, cómo se conseguía eso de tener que ponerme una ropa especial que me diera porcentaje, justo ir al animal, es lo que ellos dicen, en plan, que para llegar a ese nivel de crafteo más alto para poder competir con ese drop, tengas que ser el mejor, o sea, en plan, que si haberme subido hacha a un nivel muy alto para poder conseguir la savia de un árbol específico, que con esa savia voy a hacer, no sé, que a la gente que juegue PvE y le mole el crafting, incentivarlos también.
It's really good to hear. It's something that I was definitely concerned about, because very often in mini games it's hard to balance kind of crafting and also like high-end gear. And another thing is that the way that gearing and the level requirements for gear works in the beta or the preview right now is that there's about 3 different tiers. It's like 20, 35, and 50 for like almost all of the gear. Is there plans to add in like different tiers of gear in between those, or are those supposed to be like breakpoints?
I can't go into specifics, but we are examining the entire kind of like gear system and the thresholds and how far past 60 we're going to wind up taking it. Cool. So it's fantastic feedback. Again, we're deeply exploring that, deeply exploring weapon balance, exploring quest variety. One thing we didn't talk about, spawning.
All right.
Spawn management is a huge issue, especially coming from the world team. We want to make sure that when you enter a place that there's going to be content for you to interact with. So that's very near and dear to my heart, and I want to make sure that players always have the opportunity and that they don't feel like they're wasting their time, essentially.
There's no trading right now in the game. You can only drop things and have people pick it up. Or do you guys intend on having trading in the game?
We are definitely examining better ways to trade.
Okay, sure. Great.
Asmon just wants to know.
Vale, le pregunta acerca de los tiers, ¿vale? Todos sabemos que el tier 3, 4 y 5 son level 20, 35 y 50 para poder usarlos. Si va a haber más tier intermedios o demás. Y le contestan que es una de las cosas que están toqueteando y examinando, incluso más allá del nivel 60. Luego también le pregunta ahora Asmongold acerca del tema de hacer intercambios, comerciar, que ahora actualmente pues el único sistema que existe es el de lo tiro al suelo y tú lo coges. Y dice que sí, que están viendo una manera correcta de comerciar.
No, because he wants more people to give him gold. I know that we're running out of time here, but I do...
Una broma, pero algo muy real que pasa en muchos juegos. Lo de que como streamer te den todo. Algo que para mí quita mucho valor a cuando estás jugando y demás. Pero bueno, cada quien que haga lo que él quiera y lo que él valore. Yo lo que entiendo de un MMO o un survival, que los MMOs me estoy introduciendo ahora, aunque he toqueteado en el pasado algunos, nunca profundicé. lo divertido de este tipo de juegos al final es jugarlo con un grupo medianamente cerrado de colegas y ver tu evolución y ayudarte en pequeña comunidad. O sea, a mí eso, por ejemplo, yo que he jugado Rust, conozco streamers que ponía cajas en el suelo para que se las llenaran de farmeo. Aquí se ve lo del oro. Y es algo que yo, por ejemplo... Basta. A mí me parece malo. Malo. Como imagen me parece malo, pero bueno.
I do want to ask.
We will do this again. We will do this again. I promise. It's just.
Thank you.
I will get
it.
yelled at people that I don't work with.
Yeah, can I just hit one thing
Okay.
on the head because you already mentioned it, but I want to make sure people know because I feel like it's one of the most important things right now. The best way to give feedback. You already mentioned the forums. You mentioned reaching out to different people on the community team. If somebody is watching right now and they want to give feedback, whether they're a content creator, somebody who played the game, what are the best avenues going to be the forums?
Going to the forums are the best avenues. If not, you can find me on the Twitterverse. You can find Greg Henniger. You can find Muggsy. All of our community staff. Forums are the best place. I try to check my Twitter whenever I can. But yeah, coming out of this preview week, I want everybody to know we're listening. We totally value your opinion and your feedback. If something sucks, that's great, but tell us why. Go into detail. Okay. I want to know why it sucks for you.
Hell yeah.
Because saying something, just sucks. I'm like, well, how are we going to talk about a solution if I don't exactly kind of know what the problem is and why you're having friction?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we're going to get another preview after.
Vale, pues hasta aquí la entrevista. La verdad está bastante bien, aunque bueno, Mike hasta el final no ha entrado mucho en detalles. A mi parecer son respuestas bastante abiertas. Lo que comentan ahora al final de todo es cómo ponerse en contacto y dar tu feedback y poder mejorar al fin y al cabo el juego. Dice que a través de los foros, Twitter y demás, pero que la gente sea específica, ¿vale? Esto es como lo de Twitch. Yo el otro día estábamos creando contenido, estamos haciendo el podcast sobre el juego, sobre nuestras distintas opiniones. Y llegaba gente y te decía: el juego no está hecho para ti. ¿Por qué? Y no contestaban. Siguiente, 5 minutos pasados, no tienes ni idea. ¿Por qué? Razonar vuestras respuestas. Al final es lo que él dice. No me sirve de nada que me pongáis el juego apesta. No me importa que me pongas el juego apesta. Dime, el juego apesta porque el PvP es malo, el PvP es bueno, el PvE es malo, el PvE es bueno. Lo que quieras, pero razónamela. De hecho, yo, la gente que me sigue en Twitch, perdón por seguir mirando esta pantalla. La gente que me sigue en Twitch lo sabrá que yo contesté un correo, les puse un mensaje en foro y el correo me lo han contestado hace 4 días, ¿vale? O sea, me lo han contestado y no ha sido un mensaje de bot de analizaremos tu respuesta. Ha sido un mensaje de que se ve que era una persona que lo ha contestado, que se lo pasaran a la persona exactamente correcta, ya que el correo era bastante más específico y espero tener respuestas. Y han tardado 4 días, o sea que realmente está muy bien. Y nada, espero que os haya gustado mucho la entrevista. Son 42 minutos entre... Media hora de entrevista, lo he resumido en unos 42 minutos comentando distintos puntos que ya habíamos añadido en los podcasts. Simplemente eso, espero más entrevistas con developers y ojalá se mojen un poco más. Ojalá se mojen un poco más porque después de media hora la sensación que tengo de Mike es un poco que van a llevar el juego hacia el casual player y me gusta porque eso va a hacer comunidad, pero creo que tienen que toquetear muchas cosas de las personas que le vayan a meter más horas. Porque a lo mejor el casual player deja el juego antes. Así que nada, gente, lo dejamos por aquí. Empezaré a editar otro vídeo hoy o mañana sobre las áreas de Mirgard. Tengo también otro pendiente de cómo conseguimos la legendaria y distintos juegos matando world bosses y demás. Así que nada, un placer como siempre y nos vemos. Chao, chao.